Ask anyone on the street to name royal family properties, and they only ever rattle off the obvious tourist traps. Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, maybe Kensington Palace if they read the papers. That is 5, maybe 6 properties. The public portfolio. Here is what we on staff know. The Windsor family actually controls over 30 properties across Britain. Castles, secret mansions, and estates covering hundreds of thousands of acres. British real estate worth billions of pounds. Places you will never get to see inside. Most you have never even heard of. Some are strictly private, yet we maintain them using public funds in ways they never explain. Others are Crown estate-owned, but leased quietly to relatives. Under terms they keep locked away. I see the costs buried in complex accounting. The real scale of this royal property empire is deliberately buried. Why? Because honesty would raise deeply uncomfortable questions. Questions about spending during a housing crisis. Questions about why one bloodline needs 30 different properties. Questions about whose money really pays my wages for this. I am not making this up. It is documented fact, hidden by thick velvet curtains and modern PR. These estates exist. The heavy secrecy exists. And there are reasons, very specific reasons. Why my bosses never want you knowing the truth. Leave a comment below. Did you have any idea the royals hoarded this much real estate? If you want me to keep spilling secrets the powerful try to hide, hit subscribe. These hidden histories do not tell themselves. Let us walk through the one estate every citizen knows about, but almost nobody actually sees inside. Sandringham House, our £200 million Christmas secret. Every winter, the news runs the same footage. The family strolling to the local church at Sandringham. Smiling, waving, looking perfectly, appropriately festive. The broadcast message is obvious. Normal family, normal Christmas, just like yours. Except what I see is not remotely normal. Because behind those brief PR stunts lies a 20,000-acre fortress that the public has never truly seen. Bought privately in 1862 for what would cost roughly £200 million in today's money. It is a massive agricultural business, shooting ground, and private retreat. That pulls in millions annually. Held entirely by the monarch, totally separate from the official Crown estate. I help manage about 270 rooms. Smaller than Buckingham Palace, but still an absolute beast to maintain. Jacobean architecture, endlessly gutted, rebuilt, and modernized for over 160 years. The grounds hide multiple other private residences. York Cottage, where King George V stayed, Park House, Diana's childhood home, and Anmer Hall, which I will show you later. Here is what the brochures tell you. Sandringham sits on the North Norfolk coast. King Edward VII bought the place as Prince of Wales. Elizabeth II loved it most. She spent every Christmas and deep winter behind these very walls. We generate serious income through farming and tourism, highly restricted tourism. We only ever let the public see the ground floor and the gardens, and we only unlock the main doors when the family leaves. What they never tell the public? The brutal upkeep costs. This estate is private property, hidden off the official Crown ledgers. But our crew works all year keeping these massive grounds alive. This huge house demands relentless upkeep. Guarding the royals takes a small army. Who pays our wages? The Duchy of Lancaster, supposedly private cash gathered through centuries of royal power. Downstairs, we know the line between public and private wealth barely exists. Then come the shooting parties. We've run these elite hunting grounds for over 100 years. Pheasant hunts and driven game. The masters love the tradition, while outsiders absolutely hate it. Prince Philip commanded these shoots for decades with terrifying precision. These are strictly closed doors. Just the royal family, tight circles, and highly vetted VIPs. What gets whispered on those hunting weekends? Who gets invited? Our bosses stay silent. Let me tell you why they lock the gates. They officially blame privacy and perimeter security. Makes perfect sense. We cannot have strangers snapping photos while the king eats turkey. But keeping us sealed off all year? Other grand historic manors open their doors wide. The truth? Letting people inside would expose the massive operation. It would expose exactly how our ultra-wealthy masters live. That humble family Christmas image shatters into a million pieces once you walk through all 270 rooms. Then there is the succession issue. The estate passes quietly between monarchs, using legal loopholes to dodge the inheritance taxes normal working folks pay. They say the property is worth £200 million. Probably way more. When King Charles took over from Elizabeth, did he face that huge 40% tax bill like us? Never. They passed the properties down through very special deals. They keep the commoners out. But downstairs, we talk. This estate reveals what the royal machine truly runs on. A massive real estate empire disguised as heritage. Keeping the gates closed has nothing to do with safety. It is about keeping the illusion. If the outside world witnessed the true scale of Sandringham, if they saw this raw wealth, that everyday family act falls apart. The Christmas church pictures reveal just enough. We keep the real boundaries entirely hidden. It is pure tactical strategy. Balmoral Castle, our billion-pound Scottish fortress. Sandringham might be the winter camp, but Balmoral serves as their ultimate summer stronghold. Queen Victoria bought 50,000 Highland acres back in 1852, using entirely private royal funds. I was here when Elizabeth II passed away on September 8, 2022. The sheer numbers are absolutely staggering. 50,000 acres means 78 square miles. It easily swallows up the entire city of Cambridge. Downstairs, we clean around 150 rooms spread across the stone compound. We manage endless working farms here. Dense forests, grouse moors, cold rivers, and our staff cottages. They say it's worth over £1 billion. Story goes, Queen Victoria fell hard for this place back in 1848. Maybe too much. They bought the land, tore the old castle down, and built this massive Scottish fortress. Cost them an absolute fortune. Prince Albert micromanaged everything. Now it looks fiercely Scottish. Grey stone, high towers, tartan on every chair. It's been their northern hideaway ever since. That is what the public hears. They call it a quiet sanctuary to hide from the heavy pressure of London. They arrive every August and September. I saw Prince Philip thrive here. The Queen called it her real home. Down here, she could finally breathe, far away from all those strict royal rules. You and I know that is only half the story. We keep the main gates locked tight. Sure, we let tourists buy tickets to see the ballroom and gardens for a few months, but only when the bosses leave. Once they arrive, our whole estate turns into an absolutely impenetrable private fortress. We watch the roads, no cameras. Our 50,000 acres form a massive shield, literally bigger than some countries. So what really happens during those 8 long weeks inside? They claim it is pure relaxation. That is only half the truth. Look at the logistics. Running these grounds takes a fortune. There are about 50 of us working here full-time all year. Gamekeepers, farmers, maintenance crews, and us housekeepers. When they visit, security staff triples our numbers. Our operating budget hits millions every year. Who pays for all this? The family owns this dirt directly. We supposedly turn a profit running tours, cutting timber, and farming sheep. But nobody sees our ledgers. The money stays a total secret. Then look at who gets inside. This property is pure, unfiltered royal privilege. 8 weeks every single year where my bosses can completely hide from the press. We only allow strictly staged photograph sessions here. Nobody drops by unannounced. We control every single inch. Finding this level of deep isolation is unheard of in modern Britain. Other lords open their massive homes to the public just to dodge heavy taxes. My bosses never bother with that. This land is completely private. Buying that deep silence takes centuries of hoarded family gold. Wealth gained by wearing crowns. That difference really matters. Look at what this property strategically represents. The Crown and Scotland have bad blood. This castle was Queen Victoria's clever way to dress up and perform that northern identity. All this tartan, the Highland Games, the forced Scottish design of our walls. Stick with me here. It was basically cultural theft, neatly dressed up as deep appreciation. That playbook still works. We served them in Scotland simply to legitimize the Union. Balmoral is pure politics, even when unspoken. Let me show you what stays hidden. We lost Queen Elizabeth here, but King Charles doesn't love this massive Highland castle like she did. His Majesty prefers Birkhall, a much smaller retreat on these grounds. We expect fewer royal visits to the main castle now, but the king absolutely cannot sell it. Selling would be a political disaster and a personal nightmare. So this royal estate will stay firmly in the family. We maintain a billion-pound fortress for a few weeks of use, locking the public strictly out. The real costs and purpose? Deeply hidden. You and I know this heavy secrecy isn't just privacy. It suppresses questions regarding actual cost and necessity, and whether one family should grip massive Scottish lands while independence debates still rage. Opening the estate fully means confessing its true, massive scale. Keeping the grounds heavily locked down keeps that footprint totally abstract. Outsiders know this royal fortress exists. They just don't understand what it truly means. The forgotten and the truly controversial. Just 7 miles from Windsor sits a silent property our bosses barely acknowledge: Fort Belvedere. Built in the 1750s as a strange Gothic folly, it is infamous for one reason. Right in those rooms, King Edward signed his abdication on December 10, 1936. The place is modest, roughly 20 rooms, a triangular tower, and defensive stone walls. It sits strictly on Crown Estate land, meaning it technically belongs to the British people. But they have leased it out privately since 1955. Who holds the keys? Currently, the Westons, some extremely wealthy Canadian executives. The lease details never once disclosed. Edward lived inside those walls from 1929 until 1936, hosting Wallis Simpson, the twice-divorced American whose romantic grip literally cost him the throne. When he fled, we locked Fort Belvedere up empty for 20 years. Nobody wanted a house stained by the British monarchy's biggest modern scandal. Today, it is leased out. The Westons presumably pay rent, but exactly how much? What are the rules? The Crown Estate strictly refuses to publish private property details. Let us examine this odd limbo. Public land, private use, absolutely zero transparency. We briefly considered outfitting Fort Belvedere for Prince William and Kate. Perfect location, highly secluded on Crown Estate land. They chose Adelaide Cottage instead. Why? The massive historical baggage. Moving into the abdication house invites relentless questions about royal duty and sacrifice. Far easier to just avoid it. But if Fort Belvedere is the ghost the monarchy desperately wants to forget, there is another estate the bosses wish they could erase completely. Ah, Frogmore Cottage. Built in 1901 right on the Windsor estate, Frogmore became an absolute nightmare when Prince Harry and Meghan moved in. In 2019, I watched them pour £2.4 million into renovations. Taxpayer money pulled to the sovereign grant. I knew the overhaul was unavoidable. We had 5 staff quarters in that building, requiring a total reconversion. We ripped out wiring and plumbing. The Sussexes arrived in April 2019. Just 10 months later, they shocked us, abandoning their senior royal duties. By March 2020, our principals had fled to California. I watched Frogmore sit totally empty. £2.4 million of taxpayer funds burned on an abandoned royal residence. The public fury was massive. Under heavy fire, the Duke eventually refunded those extensive renovation bills. Only for the build, not our security details or routine maintenance. Frogmore Cottage quickly became the ultimate symbol of royal entitlement. After their exit, we briefly hosted Princess Eugenie before she also left. The couple held the keys as a British base while anchored in California. Paying rent on paper, but the rooms stayed dark. Then King Charles finally ordered an eviction in 2023. They packed up. The Crown property was re-let, but to who exactly? My superiors simply refused to say. Stick with me. Why the strict secrecy over this public Crown property? Yet our internal allocation terms remain locked down. When Harry repaid the renovation debt, did he cover it all? What about furnishings, security upgrades, and routine maintenance? Our ledgers were never fully transparent. Frogmore's current status is deliberately hidden. We are told it has new tenants, but all media access is strictly denied. No pictures exist. That massive £2.4 million royal renovation remains a total ghost story. To the staff, Fort Belvedere and Frogmore represent entirely different institutional failures. One reminds the royal family of their absolute worst constitutional crisis. The other became their most damaging modern public relations disaster. We hide both estates for the same reason. Exposure means exposing secrets the palace commands us to forget. Look at the next generation's estates. The younger working royals operate much differently than their grandparents ever did. Or do they really? When William and Kate wed in 2011, Her Majesty gifted them the keys to Anmer Hall, a 10-bedroom Georgian manor sitting right on the Sandringham estate. Built in the 1700s, featuring massive grounds and total operational privacy. We saw them spend between £1.5 and £3 million renovating the manor, entirely funded by the Duchy of Cornwall. My colleague served them there full-time from 2015 until 2017, while Prince William was flying as an air ambulance pilot. I can tell you, no official interior photos exist. We keep the press at a strict perimeter distance. Even basic renovation plans remain heavily guarded. Let's be honest, for the future King's Country estate, this level of secrecy is remarkable. Our standard official line? Just protecting the privacy of the children. George, Charlotte, and Louis can be kids without photographers lurking. Fair enough. Most support that. But to us, Anmer Hall represents more than child protection. 10 massive bedrooms for 5 people. We maintain a full-time staff even when the family is away. This is landed gentry life, pure and traditional aristocratic privilege. Renovation costs remained entirely private, paid by the Duchy of Cornwall. But that duchy historically built its massive wealth simply through royal position. The strict distinction between public and you and I know their private wealth means absolutely nothing when public duty pays for everything. Then there is the security perimeter. Armed guards, cameras, and hard checkpoints every single time the boss arrives. Who foots the bill? They never tell us staff, citing operational safety. Highly convenient, meaning I can never check if my household budgets are justified. Just look at how His Majesty handles Highgrove House down in Gloucestershire. The Duchy of Cornwall bought the estate back in 1980 for £750,000. Today, that property commands over £5 million. I watched the public tour his famous gardens, booked months ahead during select seasons. Inside the house, my domain remains locked. The king engineered these grounds as master classes in organic farming and sustainable landscapes. His wildflower meadows and the intricate stumpery earn respect across the globe. He takes true pride in letting outsiders observe them, strictly under our watch. But the main house? Only tight glimpses in staged portraits. I never permit full access. Our renovation ledgers stay buried. The lockdown is completely absolute. When the master became king, complications surfaced. Would William inherit the keys? Surprisingly, the king kept my workplace through a quiet arrangement we staff never fully understood. That royal estate exists solely to bankroll the Prince of Wales. William holds that title now, yet His Majesty retained Highgrove purely for himself. I assume he pays rent somewhere, but the ledgers are locked. Opening the gardens is a calculated distraction. Our press officers use it to deny any secrecy. Look, they let you visit, but not really. I enforce the routes, showing exactly what His Majesty dictates. No stranger ever breaches my doors. Then I think of Birkhall, 15 miles from Balmoral, a white Georgian manor the Queen Mother secured in the 1930s. Upon her death in 2002, my boss inherited everything. He and the Queen Consort spend their Scottish summers here, avoiding the sprawling Balmoral fortress. I manage about 15 to 20 rooms. Thousands of rugged acres, with property lines we intentionally keep hidden. Active farms, rushing rivers, endless grouse moors. I ensure almost no photographs leave Birkhall. My superiors authorize maybe 2 tightly controlled portraits every few years. That is all. 0 indoor tours, absolutely no camera crews. For an estate held by the Crown for almost a century, the total media blackout is staggering. I prepared Birkhall for their private honeymoon in 2005. It belongs to them, unlike any other residence I maintain. Untethered from Diana, completely free from the heavy royal ghosts. Our heavy security guards that intimacy. Still, it bothers people. If His Majesty demands an entirely hidden sanctuary, does that mean the other mansions are merely stages? Think about it. Is he always performing? 3 different estates, 3 royal generations, identical patterns, massive wealth, absolute silence, and private ledgers that are hardly private. The manors rotate, but our silence remains forever. Step inside the minor royal estates. First, my employer, Prince Edward, 11th in succession, occupies a sprawling 57-room Surrey mansion called Bagshot Park. We are told the Crown Estate leased him this property for £5 million in 1999. £5 million for a 150-year property lease. Did His Highness actually write out that check? They negotiated this royal arrangement behind heavy, closed doors. The actual terms kept strictly hidden. I patrol 51 acres at Bagshot Park. Constructed in 1879, rebuilt in 1913, it originally boasted 120 rooms before we converted many into workspaces. The Prince runs his production business here. My hardest task is dusting the famous Indian billiard room, an 1880s gift from Indian royalty, completely covered in elaborately carved, high-maintenance wooden details. The Crown Estate manages the external structure. His Highness covers my wages and utilities. What does that financial split mean? We servants never know. The lease remains locked away. Why does a minor royal require 57 separate rooms anyway? We are told he runs his enterprise from home and requires offices. But 57? Come walk with me. The truth is, my master lives here because he can. Because the royal property portfolio allows it. Because he happens to be the king's brother. Because claiming space is what royals do. Where did those £5 million actually originate? From his own wealth or the late Queen's private funds? Some secret duchy arrangement? Never disclosed. For deals using public land, the absolute lack of transparency is truly remarkable. Compare my master to Princess Anne. Her staff don't manage a palace. They run a gritty, fully operational working farm. Gatcombe Park, down in Gloucestershire. 730 acres the Queen bought her in 1976 as a gift. It cost £750,000 then. Today, the estate tops £7 million. Anne has commanded it for nearly 50 years, raised her children there. She forged her reputation as the hardest-working royal from a remote estate most Britons never even see. Exactly how Her Royal Highness wants it. Her Georgian house has about 12 bedrooms, very comfortable, yet far from ostentatious. The true asset out there is land. 730 acres of active farmland. Her staff manages cattle, sheep, crops. None of this is decorative. It is a genuine agricultural enterprise. Anne outworks almost every other royal. She tackles over 500 official engagements most years. Highly respected, rarely controversial, and she lives quite simply, at least relatively speaking. No massive palace, no oversized staff like us downstairs, just a farm and Georgian house. This is exactly what King Charles claims he wants for his modern, slimmed-down monarchy. Anne has done it for decades, yet her Gatcombe estate still raises questions. You and I must ask, if she manages on a farm, why do my masters need these estates? If 12 bedrooms suffice for a respected princess, why am I endlessly dusting 57 rooms for Prince Edward? But here lies the hidden complication. The Queen purchased Gatcombe using private Duchy of Lancaster funds. Technically private, but historically amassed entirely through their royal position. That royal transfer dodged both inheritance and capital gains taxes. I watched the estate's value skyrocket, from £750,000 to over £7 million. All while the mistress of the house paid absolutely zero property tax, simply because of her royal rank. The Princess Royal claims she outworks anyone in Britain. She believes she earned her grand estate. Most staff would agree. Still, let me show you how royal fortunes quietly multiply using loopholes ordinary citizens never see. Then we have Royal Lodge. Sweeping its 30 rooms makes you realize this entire royal setup is utterly indefensible. Hidden across 98 acres of Windsor Great Park, it used to house the late Queen Mother. In 2003, they leased it to Prince Andrew for 75 years, £250 weekly. 250 quid a week for a 30-room palace. That is cheaper than a London studio. The Duke refuses to leave, ignoring relentless pressure from the king. Stripped of titles and bleeding cash from that massive legal settlement, our disgraced master just dug in. And apparently, the king himself cannot evict him. Freshly divorced in 2003, the prince hammered out his lease. Rent was £250 weekly, under the condition he handled all renovations and estate upkeep. The manor was falling apart, so the Duke supposedly dumped £7.5 million into repairs. Supposedly, this fortune came directly from his own pockets. Except our master doesn't have £7.5 million. His royal allowance was surprisingly slim. So where did the renovation cash actually come from? Kitchen gossip claims the Queen helped, while others whisper about shadowy backdoor business deals. The funding remained completely hidden. Then the scandals hit. First Epstein, then that catastrophic television interview, and finally a £12 million payout to settle court cases. The Duke's royal existence completely vaporized. They stripped his military ranks, his patronages, and his Royal Highness title. His calendar of duties went completely blank. Now he's merely a private citizen who happens to share blood with the king. The king wants him permanently gone. Why should a disgraced exile hold down a 30-room fortress on the crown's most prized land? His Majesty offered Frogmore Cottage instead, a tactical retreat to a smaller, more appropriate, comfortable home. The Duke refuses, using his ironclad lease as legal armor. 75 years at 250 quid weekly is a downright unbelievable steal. Breaking that contract would be legally brutal and publicly explosive. This defiance isn't just blind pride. It's rational calculation. But downstairs, we whisper about something darker. You have to wonder, why can't the king evict his brother from crown territory? What leverage does the master hold? Rumors say he holds devastating royal family secrets. Others believe the Queen forced promises Charles must keep. Honestly, reality is likely boring. That long lease is completely bulletproof. A forced eviction looks worse than letting him stay. But the real scandal is my maintenance ledger. 30 rooms don't dust themselves. We need heating, full-time maids, groundskeepers, and endless repairs. That burns hundreds of thousands yearly, and the Duke supposedly foots the bill. How? That massive lawsuit settlement supposedly drained his royal coffers. I promise you, someone is secretly funding this estate's upkeep. The ledgers stay hidden. Royal finances are strictly private, remember? Look closely. His known income can't cover it. 3 royal estates, 3 siblings. I clean Edward's 57-room mansion. It operates on a classified £5 million lease. Anne's farm, bought tax-free. And Andrew is dug into a scandal fortress they cannot breach. Different targets, same protocol. Pure royal privilege, shielded by absolute silence. Let me show you the machine behind the velvet curtains. The sovereign grant pulled £86.3 million between 2022 and 2023. That is public money, fully visible. We hand out annual reports and hold briefings, a perfect illusion. But I see the gaps. Security costs vanish from the books, locked down as state secrets. The whispers put the actual burn rate between £100 and £200 million yearly. That sits completely off the main ledger. They route it quietly through the Home Office and police budgets. Every estate demands a tactical perimeter when the family arrives. Like Sandringham for Christmas, or locking down Balmoral for 8 weeks. Or William at Anmer Hall. The operational burn compounds across 30 target locations, but the master bill disappears. Then comes the smokescreen dividing the Crown estate from private land. This is where the paper trail goes dark. The estate commands strongholds worth a staggering £15.6 billion. Technically, the reigning monarch holds the keys by right of the Crown. Yet outside operators run the show. The Treasury takes the profit. In return, our boss extracts the sovereign grant. Right now, that cut is 12% of the estate yields. But this empire was amassed over centuries of absolute royal dominance. Territories were seized, passed down, and claimed purely through sovereign force. Slapping an independent label on it today changes absolutely nothing. When they lease out Crown assets to family, like Edward at Bagshot Park, or Andrew's Royal Lodge, those contracts are drafted entirely off-grid. We staff never know if they pay market rates or get steep family cuts. The duchies of Lancaster and Cornwall are branded as private zones, but they only exist because of hereditary bloodline power. Lancaster acts as the monarch's personal, untraceable supply line. That funnels about £24 million straight to Charles every year. Cornwall runs the Prince of Wales, dropping roughly £23 million into William's account. Neither pays corporate tax. Both possess full immunity from capital gains hits. When Charles overhauled Highgrove, he tapped the duchy vault. William also raided the duchy reserves to completely renovate Anmer Hall. Look at this with me. They call it private spending, but it's fueled by public office, using tax loopholes civilians could never touch. Property maintenance is where the real money vanishes. We see the books for Buckingham Palace's 10-year, £369 million overhaul. Clean public money for a public headquarters. But watch Sandringham's relentless upkeep, Balmoral's massive forestry crews, and Highgrove's organic gardens. Our crews maintain these private compounds professionally all year long. The duchies drop vague financial summaries, never detailed property-by-property intel. The real costs remain completely dark. They call them private matters. Our own salaries are buried too. This official household deploys an army of roughly 500. We are all sovereign grant funded. But what about us? The staff at Sandringham, Balmoral, Highgrove, Birkhall, and the rest. Housekeepers, groundskeepers, gamekeepers, farm managers, and maintenance crews. Hundreds of us working off the books, our wages missing from the sovereign grant. Because we run their private estates. Then look at the royal inheritance. Everyday citizens pay 40% inheritance tax on anything over £325,000. The family's properties pass tax-free between monarchs thanks to a 1993 deal. Even private retreats like Sandringham and Balmoral are fully included. These massive homes pass from Elizabeth to Charles, entirely tax-free. Charles will hand them to William the exact same way. The empire's wealth quietly compounds, untouched. Calculate it, the hidden security. Shielded duchy incomes, and the endless property maintenance we perform. Our invisible salaries, that tax-free inheritance. The true price of serving them is completely hidden. Outsiders guess anywhere from 300 to over 500 million pounds every single year. Nobody truly knows because our ledgers are locked tight. That is absolutely intentional. Total transparency would completely destroy them politically. If the public saw the sheer scale of the estates we constantly maintain, if you watched public and private funds blend together like we do, if you knew the real price, the applause would stop. Over 30 royal properties, billions in value. Massive expenses kept perfectly hidden behind the palace gates. Our employers control more residential real estate than entire towns, all while the people outside face a brutal housing crisis. That is the monarchy's real estate secret. Not one mansion, but the entire rigged system. Managing the sheer volume of wealth is totally indefensible today. The claim that one family actually requires this many separate homes crumbles under any real scrutiny. If I walked their biggest fans through all 30 homes, they'd ask, "Is this too much?" The forced silence downstairs stops that exact question. Keep every house disconnected in the public's mind. We prep Sandringham for Christmas, Balmoral for summer, Windsor for royal work. Seen individually, each property feels perfectly justified. Seen together, we maintain a literal empire. The king is just one man. He only sleeps in one bed at a time. Yet we keep Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, and Clarence House ready for him. Plus Sandringham, Balmoral, Birkhall, and Highgrove. We prep Kensington, Anmer, and Adelaide for William. Anne gets Gatcombe Park. Edward takes Bagshot Park. Andrew clings to Royal Lodge. We maintain 13 major estates for 5 people doing actual royal work. Beatrice, Eugenie, and the cousins, we are forbidden to discuss their private arrangements. Meanwhile, home ownership is totally impossible for most young citizens outside. People outside pay 40 to 50% of their wages on rent. Social housing waiting lists stretch on for years, mopping 30 sprawling mansions for one single family. While millions struggle to rent one bedroom, just feels absolutely obscene. The king took the throne, promising a truly slimmed-down monarchy. Fewer royals, slashed costs, supposed modernization. Yet their vast property empire hasn't shrunk. Down here, the secrecy just intensified. Shrinking this portfolio is personally and politically impossible. Selling Sandringham off? Unthinkable. hours since 1862. Open Balmoral all year round? That kills its whole purpose. Boot Prince Andrew from Royal Lodge? The king apparently cannot. Hand over Highgrove? That's the king's life's work. Every estate has fierce defenders, history, and excuses that sound completely reasonable. But altogether, I serve a system built for an era when monarchs truly ruled, not just reigned. When aristocratic privilege was simply accepted. When the public had absolutely no say in how these royal resources were spent. That age is dead. Yet this massive property system remains, guarded by heavy secrecy that gets increasingly hard to justify. Transparency would force the exact changes my bosses desperately fear. If every palace cost was published, if our staff salaries were publicly disclosed, if every security bill was audited publicly, the pressure to sell would be irresistible. Parliament would face massive demands to slash funding. The public would demand immediate consolidation. The lie that this family pays its own way would totally collapse, so we hide the ledgers. The estates remain in royal hands. True costs stay hidden. You and I know the public is left guessing the true scale of the empire they fund. Prince William faces an impossible situation. He built a careful image, modern, relatable, deeply concerned about our social issues. He talks openly about homelessness and mental health. He poses as the monarchy's bright new future. Supposedly slimmed down, relevant, connected, yet he just inherited the massive Anmer Hall. He holds keys to multiple palaces. When crowned, he gets Sandringham and Balmoral, piling onto his already massive royal holdings. How does he square that luxury with the modern image he built? He cannot, not without genuine, real change. Let's be honest, real change means surrendering properties, opening others, and publishing our full accounting. That level of transparency would instantly strip away their mystique and likely destroy the public support for the system handing his family these wild privileges. The most likely reality is more continuity. William will make symbolic gestures, maybe opening up one more property slightly. He might surrender one tiny estate, but our core system stays locked. The heavy secrecy continues. This vast property empire stays totally intact because dismantling it means the royals admitting it shouldn't even exist like this anymore. This sprawling property problem may be what ultimately crushes the British monarchy itself. Not scandals, not some unpopular individuals, but the slow, creeping realization that our whole system is fundamentally incompatible with modern Britain's values. They simply cannot keep 30 properties for one single family, while our nurses use food banks. They can't maintain billion-pound estates privately while the National Health Service crumbles from underfunding. They can't demand your respect while we hide the true cost of this privilege. I watch this divide sharpen every year. The masters hope that by hiding their massive property empire, by never letting you see the true scale of it, they can keep us serving them blindly forever. Elizabeth pulled it off. Her sheer authority silenced any questions. Charles lacks that kind of power. William never will either. One day, a broke government will kick down the doors for our ledgers. They will expose every hidden estate, the exact costs, and who actually pays. When you and the British public see those books open, you will stop asking if you support the crown and demand why you fund this. The extra manors I clean aren't kept secret because any single one is a dirty scandal. My masters hide them because together, they expose a system of royal privilege that cannot survive the daylight. That is why we stay quiet. That is the real property crisis. So my masters keep the empire buried. Exposure brings questions the royal family cannot answer, without admitting this whole palace is a relic Britain can no longer afford.